Yes, of course. Thank you.
Yes, okay. So let me introduce you. Today in this lecture, we have Dr. Mihaela. She is presently the director of the Center for Agricultural Sciences and Environmental Protection. It is at the Faculty of Agricultural Sciences, Food Industry and Environmental Protection in the University, Lucian Blaga University of Sibiu. It's located in the almost in the center of Romania, which is mountain-bound country and really very beautiful country with the beautiful people. Professor Maria has started her career almost in '93. I should say then more or less I also started at the same time in '92. So we are in fact having the same similar trajectory of the starting of the career. So she had been the vice dean of the faculty for 5-6 years until 2020. Importantly, she used to be the head of the biodiversity and biosafety unit in the Ministry of Environment of the Romania. And she was the part of the delegation to Convention on Biological Diversity. So she had been instrumental in developing many country reports to the CBD. She has been very well-known biologist and headed different units in the country. So she is a fine expert in the biodiversity and genetic resources of the Eastern European region. So today she will be with us and be enlightening us with a very vibrant and very rare topic on the red listing of the varieties. Red listing, when we speak this word, this is well known and very well heard word in the case of the IUCN red listing of the species. That is particularly the case of the wild species of the plants and animals, and even the microflora and fauna. But in the case of the agricultural biodiversity, really this is a rare subject and rare topic. At least I have come across. So today we will be benefiting from her expertise and knowledge, fine knowledge about this topic and subject. So this is very relevant for all of us. So let us enjoy her knowledge and expertise. So now I hand over the forum to you, Dr. Maria. Please come forward. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hasrat, for this introduction. I do appreciate everything Grassroots Institute is realizing, and I am deeply honored to be with you today. And I really hope that this hour spent together, all together, will bring me also some enlightenment for making further steps in the development I intend to do for our research in our country. I will start my presentation with your permission. I hope it is seen, my first slide. My proposal for today to discuss is red listing the crops at the variety levels, so crops varieties, as a tool to respond climate change and food security challenges. Maybe it is strange as a topic. Why? Because we may consider that we have mills all over. So we have retailers, we have shops, food shops, we have restaurants. In certain countries, there are HoReCa industry very well developed. And maybe it's not the time to put such a question. However, due to different kind of experiences I had, and also by realizing some research in this field, I realized that we may have problems for the future, for our future generations, if we don't take care about our genetic resources in order to be preserved, well preserved. This is one of the landscape you may very often see in our country. It is a small village. I was able to come in mission here and to make surveys at a local level, starting with the year 2010. So some years ago, I was coming in Sibiu, having my background in biology and also in policy. I realized the richness of the region in traditional knowledge connected to agriculture, to varieties, to food producing or processing, so religion and other beliefs. If under the CBD, Convention on Biological Diversity, we are learning about traditional knowledge under the Article of 8J, we have to admit that some interesting landscapes can hidden in almost all European countries traditional knowledge or local knowledge. And I'm pretty sure all civilized countries may have such places. So I start to put my questions immediately when I have seen such heritage in our villages. Do these species are endangered or not? These varieties, local varieties, may be them classified in a certain methodology as being endangered or not? Is there another instrument for agriculture to protect varieties? Yes, it is. And it is about UPOV Convention, which is the convention protecting intellectual property rights connected to the development of biodiversity under agricultural biodiversity, so domestic biodiversity, as well as we have also other instruments like official catalogs, official databases that are supporting the commercial or the trade of these varieties. But in these databases, the old land races are disappearing all the time. When we are talking about varieties, we are talking about a constellation of genetic structure of each of these varieties. This constellation of genetic structure is unique, and it is developed under certain agricultural, let's say, factors that are influencing their evolution, adaptation for each single factor, including climate change. Red listing is not for the wild species. Of course, red listing as a concept is coming from the wild species. Is it possible to transfer such classification also for domesticated varieties? Crops are not protected. Yes, they are protected only if they are under the official catalog or under the UPOV regulation. Is this a political issue? Maybe it is a political issue, but rather is a scientific to the border of political issue in order to envisage a kind of new domains or subdomains for the research areas. Is it science in here? You will see it should be science in here. I start to think about this because I am a fan of Aristotle theories, and I may say not all theories of Aristotle, but working with subjects, we need to define them. We need to find out about the attributes of these wonderful subjects. And going back to the principle laid down by Aristotle, I start to define my background in order to understand where to look first. So when we are talking about our common sector, which is the basic for sustainable development, it is a noise there.
Professor, can I interrupt just few seconds?
Okay.
All the audience, please mute your mics. Some people have unmuted their mics. I can see Zoya is having
Microphone.
Yeah. Please off your microphone. There are 3 other people should also mute their mics.
So I'll talk about sustainable development. It is the year 1878. 1987, when it was decided in Zoya. I cannot interfere for interrupting the microphone.
Let me resolve this in a minute. 1 minute, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I start thinking to the very origin time, what sustainable development means. So the sustainable development means also social, economic, and also environmental. These are the terms. Zoya Puskova, please turn off your microphone. Thank you. So when we are talking about social, economic, environmental issues, there are overlaps in between them and different kind of, let's say, different kind of dimension we may find inside each of the subsections of these domains. And the entire European regulation and policy is basically based on this principle, as well as I very well understood at a pan-European level and also at the global level. Sustainable development, it is a subject very, very important. In terms of biodiversity, we are talking about agrobiodiversity, but agrobiodiversity, it's really covered by a lot of other multilateral environmental agreements. And inside each of them, we may find relevance towards agrobiodiversity. if we are considering global temperature change, then we may see that starting with the 17th century, the temperature is gradually increased. Maybe it is an overlapping in between the development of industrial technology, the development of our society, or indeed it is climate change. So we need to adapt and to mitigate to climate change based on different kinds of measures we have to apply. Navigating among all these political commitments, we try to make SWOT and the PESTEL analysis, considering the environment, political, regulatory environment of our country, as well as the scientific literature in our country. Also, we added the spin-off and also the DRISP, the spin-off for the capacity building needs, and the DRISP in order to see if we really may find some weaknesses in the system, also some pressures, and also some drivers in order to phasing out our varieties from our official catalogs. In fact, the first ideas for red listing the crops at the species level came from Asia, from Nepal, from the esteemed Professor Joshi. I really appreciate the work Krishna Joshi has done in Nepal, and I read almost everything he published. And I was really impressed about the way a geneticist try to connect science with traditional knowledge up to the downest level in agroecosystems. After that, in 2008, I read about this in the national, let's say, strategy for biodiversity conservation of Germany, because also they were involved in 2008 in adopting a tool for red listing the crops at the species level. And probably all this information was triggering me out to define the scientific environment, to define the red listing methodology for Romania. Another German scientist this time, Karl Hammer and Korouz Koshbakhsh from Iran today, discovered based on scientific literature from historical times studied that at least 10 species of agriculture interest disappeared during time, during 6,000 times. So at least at the species level, it was the first time such a book underlined that 10 species disappeared during our history. We know about the red listing categories coming from the IUCN, from extinct in the wild up to not evaluated. There are about 9 categories. And based on this, in 2011, I tried to develop a methodology for Romania under my post-PhD grant I had under the Romanian Academy. And I tried to put all the information coming from the scientific level up to the political level in order to substantiate this kind of methodology. I try further to show to you and to talk to you about this. First of all, I try to define the scene down to the local level, because this is really important. So I go to my householders, up to the agricultural ministry throughout the network of testing varieties in the country. I applied also the principles for sustainable development, which means biodiversity loss, anthropic pressure, climate change, energy, resilience of agroecosystems, fair access to genetic resources. So where to go? Territorial administrative units, which officially are recognized at the national level, landscape units within these territorial administrative units, and also in close connection with the Florence Convention on Landscape, as definitions, agroecosystem versus landscape units, and of course, cultural heritage. To whom to address? To mayors, of course, all authorities, because they can open the doors for farmers and householders in order to make those missions of surveying, inventories, and staying at least one day in one house in order to see everything is possible to be seen, from the gardens, species, the way of gardening, technique of gardening, as well as up to how the food is preserved, conserved, processed, or used during 365 days, 1 year length, and what type of biodiversity they are accessing also in order to develop further their access to genetic resources for food or for agriculture. Non-government organizations and foundations, we understand this is very well and welcome and beneficial if we are talking with communicators, different and all stakeholders possible will be to find there. This is Romania as a map. In this part is, you may find Ukraine. This is Moldavia. This is Hungary, and this part is with Serbia, and in the southern part of Romania is Bulgaria. We also have an open space to Black Sea. This is the place where I am coming from, so it's a hilly culinary mountain area, and you may see here these territorial administrative units, how diverse can be in terms of landscape, as well as in terms of the percentage in between arable land, pasture land or grassland, and also mountains, or in this case, you may see forests. I try to work with traditional knowledge, maybe splitting categories of traditional knowledge from wild plants, domesticated plants, rural activities, and rural organization and functioning. Why? Because in the rural area, and I'm pretty sure it is all over the world, we have complete different time. We have complete different people, full of energy and full of different type of kind of life. So this is the Ațel as a map. You can see from the airplane. It's from a Google map. This is the way it is established, the village. It is a traditional one. It took about 800 years of historical documentation of existing of this village. So the way these villages are built up are very, very old. You may see here arable land, as well grassland, as well as forestry. We may consider in this century, yes, and it was as a gardening crop, but in less than 200 years become very important and competitive with the wheat. We have also traditional orchards that are very, very old. Apple tree is present in our settlements as proofs coming from archaeological excavation for more than 6,000 years, which means that that area, it's really an area where wild apple was in his or its habitat. For this, we have a publication, and also we were interested in what is happening at the official level in Romania. And also we try to, as an example for today, to see the diversity of wild crops relatives in Romania, all connected to Triticum aestivum. If we are talking about wheat varieties that officially are traded in Romania, we make an investigation for more than 20, up to date, for more than 20 official catalogs, and realize that Romania's varieties are quickly phasing out from the official catalog, especially after 1989, and at least in 2 waves. This means somewhere in 2004 and 2007, mostly just the year when Romania joined the European Union. Also, we made investigations together with other colleagues in order to understand what new varieties have been developed by the scientific Romanians involved in the development of varieties for wheat. And you may see here about 34 old varieties, all of public research products that have been validated in 2018. In this group, we continue up to the 50 here you may see also the wheat varieties that have been recognized in Romania after 92 up to 2007, and they have been phasing out once Romania entered the EU. This is a state case for Albota, which is a variety from wheat that is really a variety that is accommodated, adapted for the climate in these Carpathians. And also it is endangered species because variety, because it is not, it was not at the time being considered as a variety under conservation. These are other images coming from our missions. And you may see that in 2006, Romania had to phasing out more than, let's say, 49, 30, yes, 46 varieties from our public research area. I'm not sure basic on what, but after the publication of the red listing in Romania, I have to say to you that almost a quarter of them are now considered into the official catalog as varieties under conservation. Arieșan was very popular in Transylvania, also in Sibiu area. Here we may have the list of vulnerable varieties under political agenda of 2007. And I can provide to you this presentation, and you can look closer in order to see the country of origin of these varieties, the year of registration and of cancellation. Here you may see also very interesting varieties that entered starting with 2011 as varieties under conservation, and I was really happy that were not lost. Starting working with these issues, we try to propose at the global level that also for the crops varieties, we may define at least 9 categories of endangerment, let's say, for varieties of crops. Extinct, if these varieties are not existing on farm, are missing in all ex situ collections, or is not anywhere else in the world. Endangered within on farm, when the taxon exists on farm and overlaps position 3 of the category proposed by Joshi and collaborators in 2004. Why? Because we try to cope also with the results of science of other colleagues in over the borders. So we really appreciate the work done by Professor Joshi. So we really try to cope also with his definition in these terms. We may have extinct on farm, we may have critical endangered on farm, and the dynamic of presence of traditional knowledge there can be more accessed and more evaluated in order to be sure that such endangered varieties cannot go for extinctions. Of course, we may have vulnerable on farm. Such genotypes are not endangered, but still they are not included in any conservation program, official catalog, and so on. We have near threatened species. We have least concerned on farm or not evaluated on farm, because we may have data, but not all data can be considered as valid, and also following principle and scientific principles, of course, coming from the IUCN red listing methodology. This is one example. And I can say that one article we published on defining such categories was embraced at the global level, and it was also reminded, or it was taken into considerations in different papers in the FAO level, and for that we are really proud on one hand and really content that our work is appreciated up to that level. Red listing 50 historical varieties are extinct already on farm in the second category, and we have the list already here. It is validated already. I mentioned here Fundulea 900, which at the time being was extinct in Romania. It was a creation coming from the Institute of Crops Varieties Development from Fundulea nearby Bucharest. And they lost this line, very, very significant line, because it comprises in its genome at least 2 genes working on the same chromosome for the resistance against buccinia or wheat rust. And by now we are very lucky this is preserved in China gene banks. And China Gene Banks is accessing this wonderful variety for developing the strategy for breeding wheat in China. So it is possible, based on accessing the multilateral system, to have once again these seeds in Romania, and to let's say shortening the list of extinct varieties already realized by us. Extinct on farm, we may have a lot of data, 184 varieties, critical endangered on farm. And all of these, talking only about wheat varieties, validated in 2018. I think, are you hearing me? Because
yes, it is very well going. Yes, please go ahead.
Steps forward: make visible the germ plants collection, bring together scientists, breeders, developers, economists to further develop innovative financial mechanisms for supporting in a win-win approach all genetic pools in Romania. Such kind of actions would be preferable up to all countries all over the world. Also, we need as scientific community to be very close to our gene banks from the national level. And in this way to connect to multilateral system of the plant treaty. And what to do in this regard, because our gene banks need to be supported, and maybe us as universities or research institutes, we may provide an excellent example on one hand, and also a great help and support in making visible plant genetic resources coming from these rural, remote areas, because it is really hard for gene banks to guess where to go in order to find precisely the best genetic resources they really intend to preserve for the future generations, in order, of course, to support food security for the future. We may develop innovative financial mechanisms to support the conservation of plant genetic resources at the regional county level for the cultivation and commercialization, especially under the directives under the European Union, which are presenting different kind of mechanisms in order to be recognized. And of course, it will be a great honor to work together with people interested in connecting with us on this approach. So what to do if we really want to make visible these genetic resources, this treasure, to gene banks? Another action of us was to go in another village and make other missions during 2018. And during 2019, we really were able to publish the first management guidelines for traditional gardens in countryside in Romania. That is interesting because at the official local level, all genetic resources considered by the local community that belongs to them for many generations can be officially recognized as having value of heritage under the Convention UNESCO for Heritage Protection. So our idea was to bring together local community farmers, householders, and scientific also, and other organizations, in order to understand the value of this traditional knowledge connected to seeds, to agricultural practices, and mainly associated to local people working and dealing with this. So under this proposition, local mayor realized that rewarding the proud of the people would be very, very important in order to further catalyze the preservation of this fantastic traditional knowledge of these people or families that really are attached to seeds, really are attached to traditional knowledge in order to preserve their local heritage. And these are the articles mentioning what is really important for the community. They are considered as part of local heritage, like seeds that are cultivated for more than 50 years, for more than 100 years. And if they are of more than 100 years, this means that these seeds can be defined as land races. So once we have such recognition at the local level, also the scientific community can have resources to go there and to really analyze these genetic resources if they are different compared to the same category of genetic resources. And who knows, maybe to discover new genetic markers that can be really valuable in our fight to develop varieties having resistance against climate change effects like drought, like different kind of diseases, and so on. But of course, the same council decision is devoted to families, the owners that are in the possession of this local knowledge or traditional knowledge, of working with these seeds, of embracing their traditional local technologies, and especially in continuing their cultivation for more than 50 years, for more than 100 years. And this is coming like a privilege in the front of the entire community up to the county level. So for red listing for the crops should be a really strategic instrument for many subjects. First of all, conservation and use of these plant genetic resources in harmony with policy, regulatory framework, and regional peculiarities. Acknowledgement among local population of the value of arable land, knowledge connected to its use as sustainable agricultural practices, but also the value of predicting the best option for agriculture regarding the best crop to be cultivated and the most appropriate agricultural practices to be applied when we are talking about this type of climate change and prediction activity, if we will have a very drought year or a wet year. So the community should know what types of varieties to be more resistant to them. Or integrating all these values into the national strategy for breeding on long term, for ensuring food security under climate change, which means science. So this red listing crops as a strategic tool, I may consider that would be a catalyst for new subdomains in research area too. I do appreciate your attention during this presentation. I thank you so much for your kind attention and I'm open for discussion. Thank you. Dr. Hasrat?
Yes, we open the forum for the discussions.
Or for answering the question, if
Yes,
question
yes.
This is a kind of new domain. And I realized also that working with this red listing methodology may also have impact on the circular economy at the local level, because this awareness for the local people about the relevance of their genetic resources and giving this impetus on raising the proud, having these crops genetic resources will have an impact also on HoReCa, hotel, restaurants and canteens, let's say industry, because of the taste of the meals that are originating by using these crops genetic resources inside local communities. So HoReCa, it is really interested in having the best local taste in their restaurants. So for this reason, in our country, starting with 2016, it was a movement, a political movement that was embraced under the title of European Region of Gastronomy, when such villages and families working with traditional seeds were involved in supplying these agricultural products directly to at least 12 restaurants in Sibiu city in order to change their offer to the customers and imply the local taste for foreigners or for visitors coming in Sibiu. I would say also that this type of working was beneficial during the pandemic with COVID, because in 2020, when the pandemic was closing our country, we were already in the possession of web platform for local food. So if the people were forbidden for them to go to the marketplace or to the shops, food shops, to go there, they were able to make these applications online and have the food directly on their door. So to have the food on the door, it was another beneficial, let's say, part coming from local food. It is a side effect if you are accessing local food or local genetic resources, and of course engaging with these informational platforms in order to support for the people the connectivity, fast connectivity in between householders and farmers and consumers. If there are some questions, I see no question into the chat. Thank you for your appreciation, Ala. Maybe we can develop some projects together. Why not? Sorry for having my camera off. Dear Dr. Hasrat, if you have some questions for this.
It is really very depth and very, very, it has all fine details.
Thank you.
Yes, and very, very impressed with your explanation you have given, the way you have explained the things. And it is full of your local examples and local works that you have done. Precisely, it is
The sound is not very good, Dr. Hasrat. I'm not sure why. It's a kind of noise. Dr. Hasrat, if it is required, I can provide the full PDF of this presentation. Thank you, Zoya. Thank you, Anatoly. I hope to join you and you join me. Maybe we can exchange information on these topics. I can provide you my email on this messenger if you are really interested. To further explain our methodology and our results in this area. Thank you. Maybe it's important, I have left 2 minutes to underline a small detail I wasn't mentioning. When we are talking about UPOV, at that convention on the protection of plant varieties, and we are talking about the official catalogs, instantly we are talking about an open communication, and why not about a promotion. A high promotion of these varieties. So when we are talking about the land races, they are not promoted at all. So people cannot know that such genetic resources can exist. So for this reason, I may consider that if we have an official catalog, then the red listing methodology can be another way for communicating to the people that also other varieties may exist, and these varieties should be known by the people. And in this regard, we also may increase our offer to the public and to the people related to our genetic resources on one hand, and on the other hand, we may provide full access on multilateral system at a global level in order to increase the capacity of very strong institutes working on breeding areas, to developing their access for genetic resources and fulfill, of course, their final goal and scope in order to create the best varieties they want. I do appreciate this conversation. I can say also this presentation, and I do hope in the future that Grassroots Institute will imply me in such events, and for that I appreciate a lot your invitation, Dr. Hasrat Arjument, in having me here. Thank you very much, and keep in touch. Thank you.